Alright guys, we have a little update on the 590-mile Bring-A-Trailer S14 240SX auction. To bring you up to speed, this is an alleged sub-600 original mile 1995 Nissan 240SX SE 5-speed that surfaced on Bring-A-Trailer just a few days ago for auction. It was quickly bid up to $19,000, but while that was happening, the comments on this auction were going off about some very suspect things about the car and the seller. The owner alleges, and Carfax backs up, that this is a two-owner vehicle. It was shipped to the dealer in September 1994 and then titled for the first owner in June of 1995. No damage is reported on the Carfax, however, there is a note saying the vehicle was erroneously issued a salvage title in August of 1995 under the second owner. The car, however, currently does have a clean title. This is basically all that stands out on the Carfax. The reason this is interesting is because the seller does note that paintwork was done on the car, but when you start to dig into it, things start looking really odd, and it turns out this isn't the first time people have noticed these oddities. You see, this car was listed for sale in 2020 by Duncan Imports. This is an Internet Archive capture of the sale listing from October 2020, when it was listed for $39,000. The description reads, "This is a very clean 240SX that is all original and in pristine condition. The vehicle originally received minor damage in transit, and the original owner purchased it and fixed it up." Keep in mind, this would have happened in 1995. You can also see the Duncan Imports photos used here on the site. They have a very distinctive showroom, more on that later. Like I said, this isn't the first time people have sensed something was off about this particular S14. Zilvia, the leading 240SX forum, came back online at just the right time to ruin the seller's day, as user Crimson Rocket pointed out some suspicious things in Duncan's pictures that just don't add up, which I'll go over for you now. First, Crimson Rocket noted that in the engine bay, the foam which goes between the factory radiator and the rad support is missing. He noted some paint chipping on the core support, which he believes may be revealing it to be a replacement core support, which would make sense because from the factory there are multiple stickers on the support which are not present on this S14. The paint fade matches the rest of the engine bay, which would also line up with work being done over 25 years ago in 1995 to get this thing back to factory finish. Now, nothing's too weird just yet. The current seller and Duncan Imports both noted this car has had body work done. But then we move on to the wheel wells. The liners are missing. This is a telltale sign of more paint work. Just how extensive was this damage? It's hard to say. Moving to the underside, things start to get even weirder. We see some rattle can undercoat which doesn't match the factory finish up on the firewall, and some alleged non-factory welds up front which would coincide with the replaced core support. But stranger still, we see an anodized red radiator pulley. Why would an eBay OBX radiator pulley be installed on a 590-mile 240SX? It's important to note here that these pulleys probably didn't even exist in 1995. This is more of a Fast and the Furious era thing from a few years later, which is really weird to see installed on a car that has basically never been driven. Moving on, we see more evidence of a respray on the front end, a misaligned fender, and evidence of the rockers also being resprayed. Factory S14 rockers were painted black from the factory on all body colors, but here they are bright red like the rest of the car. Just how bad was this alleged minor damage in transit? Here we see the VIN plate, which is held in with plastic clips instead of the usual factory rivets. This means the dash has likely been replaced, and on a car like this, as Crimson Rocket alleges in the thread, probably because the passenger airbag deployed. Moving to the back, we see more notes and some obvious, more recent rattle can undercoat sprayed on the underside of the trunk, which could be to cover up surface rust. Additionally, on the trunk lid of the car, it's been completely debadged. So to me, this would appear to be a complete respray of the car. So there's a lot going on with the body and paint on this extremely desirable, extremely low mileage 240SX, but it more or less lines up with the story. Maybe somebody is downplaying the scope of the accident, but there's nothing really weird going on here. But do you notice something familiar about these photos? Mind you, Crimson Rocket's photos are from Duncan Imports' website back in 2021, not from the Bring-A-Trailer listing. But the exact same photos were submitted for the listing. The current owner of the vehicle didn't even bother to take new pictures of the car. The photos on Bring-A-Trailer are from Duncan's showroom years ago. What makes this more interesting is the fact that in the comments section, we see a bidder by the name of Pilatus addressing the naysayers. "I have seen this car. Keep the negative comments coming so I can steal this one." Pilatus bid $19,427 on the 240SX. Here's where this goes off the rails for Duncan Imports. If you look in Pilatus's post history, you'll find a comment from January 14th of this year on a 1992 Del Sol SIR that reads, "I want to buy it back, Gary Duncan." Now, we're just speculating here for legal reasons, of course, wink, but that's how a boomer would sign his post. Pilatus Pilatus allegedly is Gary Duncan, the owner of Duncan Imports. It's unclear who currently owns the 240, but based off of this, it appears Duncan Imports was actively bidding up its own Bring-A-Trailer listing to fetch a higher price on an already somewhat sketchy history 240SX. But the other shoe dropped Monday morning when Bring-A-Trailer pulled the auction. The seller and Pilatus accounts are both still active, but Bring-A-Trailer had this to say: "We corrected and took responsibility for accidentally omitting the seller's mention of the paintwork from the original listing. However, it has since become clear that there are many questions surrounding the condition of this car far beyond what was initially disclosed. The seller has failed to follow advice on how to salvage this auction from a number of commenters, as well as private conversations with us, and has instead engaged in shill bidding, an activity that we do not tolerate on Bring-A-Trailer. This listing has been withdrawn because we do not believe the issues raised by the community will be addressed by the seller." Bring-A-Trailer is basically confirming that Gary Duncan, and whoever the seller is, if he's even a separate entity at all, were engaging in shill bidding to drive the price up on this 240SX. The S-chassis market is fraught with stories like these, and it's interesting to see it happen right in front of your eyes. And it's satisfying to see the seller get shut down. But with all this said, I have to ask you, the viewer, would you ever buy a car from Duncan Imports?